right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Games History Hour. This is a collaboration between the United States Olympic and Paralympic Museum and the International Society of Olympic Historians. My name is Lindsay Flanagan-Hubin, and I am the Chief Content and Integration Officer here at the USOPM, located in Colorado Springs, Colorado. The museum celebrates the more than 13,000 incredible athletes who have competed for Team USA over the last 130 years. Today, we have three fantastic panelists who will be delving into collecting and preserving games history. So I'm going to do a quick intro for each of our panelists who are here today, and then we'll get started. Jonathan Becker has written articles on Olympic memorabilia for newspapers and magazines, authored or co-authored several books on various aspects of the subject, and is currently president of the Board of Trustees of the Lake Placid Olympic Museum. He has co-organized 18 national collectors fairs since 1990 and 2 IOC World Collectors Fairs. He also has created a database of Olympic memorabilia to help better identify objects. So good morning, Jonathan. Thank you for being with us
Good
today.
morning. Glad to be here.
Gordy Crawford retired in 2012 after 41 years at the Capital Group. A passionate Olympic collector, he is the only private collector to assemble a complete set of Olympic relay torches, along with nearly every winners and participation medal, before he then donated the collection to the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, where it now forms the Crawford Family U.S. Olympic Archives. I will note that the museum has the privilege of displaying many of these objects, including quite a few of the torches and medals, and that they are always visitor favorites. So, Gordy, thank you so much for being here this morning. And our third presenter this morning is Karen Rosen. Karen was a spectator for her first Olympic Games in Montreal in 1976. She worked as a spotter for ABC during the track and field competition in Los Angeles in 1984, and has covered every summer and winter games since 1992 as a journalist. As a coin collector growing up, Karen progressed to Olympic pins and other memorabilia after Atlanta was awarded the right to host the 1996 games. She has also been a torchbearer in 2 torch relays. So good morning, Karen.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much to everyone who is joining us on Zoom and on Facebook Live. During the conversation, you can submit any questions or comments through the chat or in the comment feature, and our panelists will answer some audience questions towards the end of the discussion today. All right. Well, first, I would like to ask each of our panelists just how did you get involved in the collecting? How did you get started? So, Jonathan, would you like to kick us off there?
Okay, well, my first Olympic Games was Munich in 1972. My family, we were on vacation in Europe, and we were in Salzburg, Austria, which isn't far from Munich. And I begged my father that because he had a rental car, could we drive up to Munich for a day to see what's going on in the games? And he acquiesced, and it was a nice little drive. And I just fell in love with it there. I picked up a couple of pins at the games. They were actually handing out I was there pins in German. They're these plastic ones you see pop up from time to time, but they had women with baskets of them just handing them out to people in the Olympic Park. And that really got me bitten for collecting pins at that point. And then Montreal in 76, I went up with several friends, spent a week in Montreal, and did some trading and picking up stuff at the Olympic Center there, at the Olympic Park and the stadium. I didn't really learn about the bigger world of Olympic memorabilia until 1984, when I saw that people actually had winners' medals and commemorative medals, participant medals, posters, and such. And so one thing led to another, and then I started doing research, became kind of an Olympic historian, and just really fell in love with it. But then really loved the Winter Games because of Lake Placid.
So I have to ask, do you still have that first pin from Munich?
I have to say, honestly, I don't think so.
Okay. Okay. Gordy, what about you? How did you get started? And I notice you are wearing a USOPC jacket today.
I am. So in the fall of 1983, my wife and I got invited by ABC to be their guest at the Sarajevo Olympics in February of 1984. I went over, and on the flight over with all these ABC advertisers, um, they handed me a big bag of they handed me an ABC guest pin and then a bag of regular ABC pins. And I said, like, what's this for? And they said, oh, people trade pins at the Olympics. So the next day I went to my first Olympic event, which was speed skating, and I put on my ABC pin, and I was immediately surrounded by five guys from the Soviet Union in the middle of the Cold War who had these big fur hats and fur coats. And for the next 20 minutes, we traded pins, and I was hooked. By the evening, I was working the lobby of the hotel, stopping the Icelandic representative to trade pins. And that was the start. So I started like pin collecting, and then it morphed, fairly quickly into collecting well, pretty much everything. I got hooked on Olympic memorabilia, and I've been to 18 Olympics, and somewhere along the line, I decided, you know what, I'm going to try to collect the entire physical history of the Olympics. And then, if I'm successful, I'm going to give it away somewhere where it can be seen by the public. And over time, I talked to the Smithsonian and I talked to LA 84 Foundation. But around 2010, when I got involved with the Olympics, with the US Olympic Committee, I decided that's where the collection should go. And so, but just one other final story. I don't want to go on forever, but I sat down with Scott Blackman at that time and said, I have this great collection that I want to give to you. You must have a great collection too. And he said, I don't know, really. And so the next time I met with him, he said, I found our collection. It's all in cardboard boxes in the basement of USA Shooting. Stored next to the ammunition. It included things like the letter from the IOC granting the 1932 Olympics to Los Angeles. So anyhow, I gave the USOPC a grant, and they built the archive. And then in 2018, I gave my whole collection I actually gave it to the US Olympic Paralympic Foundation. And it includes a complete collection of winners' medals, torches, participation medals, official reports, and then a huge badge collection, IOC session badge, tickets, programs, everything. So that was my journey in collecting.
That's pretty fantastic. That's quite a journey. Karen, what about you? How did you get involved?
Well, in 1976, at my first Olympics, I got one pin because I didn't know pins really were a thing. And then in 84, I got some ABC pins because I worked with them. And my dad was a coach and he got a medal. But I had no idea that the medals went all the way back to 1896. And so in 1990, I was covering Atlanta bidding for the Olympics. And after they won, there was a big party in Atlanta. And the person who held the party, he had a collection of participation medals. And there's one from 1900, which I think I sent a photo to Annie. And it was just gorgeous. It was an angel over Paris. And I said, I'm going to collect these. And so it started with the participation medals. And because there's only usually one from each Olympics, and what else do you get? Well, then there's pins and there's badges. And as Gordy said, you just get hooked and you get everything. Tickets, programs, official reports. So if it has the rings on it, I'm interested in it, unless it's ugly. I don't get ugly things.
So how do you decide what is an ugly thing? I'm going off script already. What is something that you would not choose to collect?
Well, there's like this one little pin from 2004 Athens. It's like a torch and it's like plastic. And even though it's an official USA pin, I don't want it. So I think it's just like, it's in the eye of the beholder, beauty.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, I would also love to know, do you have a particular focus in what you collect? Is there a time period or a sport or a games or is it just you're collecting across the board? How do you decide what to add to your collection?
Do you want me to start or would
Sure,
you? Okay.
sure.
Yeah, My favorite thing, which I developed over a number of years, because like so many other people, including the folks here, I started collecting everything way back when, and I had bins in the garage of things you don't even want to know about because they just sat there, and it was kind of silly. My wife to this day reminds me about that on and on and on, and kind of laughs about it. But what I really fell in love with because of its uniqueness and the artistry are early Olympic diplomas. The certificates that were given to the athletes and to many of the officials over the years since 1896. And the early ones, which tried to limit to myself to meaning pre-Second World War, uh, are truly spectacular pieces of art. And some of them are the size of posters. And engraved beautifully. Some have custom signatures, handwritten signatures. Most do not. But they're really works of art. And what I've done is I frame them and have them up in my office and throughout a couple of the rooms in our house. And those are my favorite things. And I had to really limit. I decided I want to really focus on things that you can display, that you don't have to keep in a box or in a bin or in a safe deposit box. And also because of my position as a board member and head of the Board of Trustees of the Olympic Museum in Lake Placid, I had to be careful and kind of step aside from anything that might be considered a conflict with the museum in Lake Placid, and that's focuses specifically on winter games. So I'm doing like summer stuff, so it's acceptable.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Gordy, Karen, do either of you have particular things that you focus on?
Karen, go ahead.
Um, no, like I said, if it has the rings on it or pre 1920 or so, they didn't have the rings. But I've tried to complete some collections and others. Like I found a little book. It's a miniature book, and it's like very, very tiny. And it has all the Olympic oath in various languages. And it's like, I have to have it. Things like that. I like the offbeat. And I also, with now we wear credentials, but like Gordy said, he has a collection of badges. The badges are works of art in themselves. Some of them are just some are beautiful, some are sort of like a little average, but other ones have different colors and shapes and different ribbons, and it's sort of like you don't know what you want until you see it somewhere, and then you're like, oh, I have to have that.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I collect everything. But the exceptions are, my wife's been very, very patient with me over the years with this collecting and taking over a whole room upstairs in our house. But the one thing she drew the line on is no posters and no uniforms because they're just too big. It was easy to do, winners medals and participation medals and badges. So I built all these cabinets and drawers for them. But that's really the only thing I didn't collect.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. So, Gordy, what has been your most, well, actually two questions. One, are you still collecting now that you have donated your collection? Are you still out there still looking for objects?
Um, Not like I used to. Um, but I still do buy an occasional thing. For instance, the one winner's medal I was missing. I have a complete collection of winner's medals, which I think is maybe the only collection in the world. I'm not even sure the IOC in Lausanne has a complete collection. The one I was missing was the 1904 gold medal from St. Louis, and I just acquired that about 3 months ago. It was a gold medal won by Frederick Schul in the 110 meters at the University of Washington in those games. It's in beautiful condition. In 40 years of collecting, I've only seen one gold medal, and that's at the LA 84 Foundation. I've been to the museum in St. Louis. They don't have any of them, bronze, silver, or gold. So I still am active in the sense of filling out the few things I don't have. The other thing that I'm actively collecting is I've decided I collected all these great winners medals from our athletes. I want to do the same thing for our para athletes. So I've committed to the museum and to the foundation that I'm going to try to purchase a complete collection of Paralympic winners medals. And I'm maybe a third of the way there. So that's the one thing I'm actively collecting.
That's really fascinating. And speaking as the museum representative, I really appreciate that your dedication to that cause. We have quite a few of yours on display right now, and we're looking forward to adding more. So, Karen and Jonathan, if I can ask, is there sort of a unicorn object that you're still looking for that you haven't found yet that Gordy found his after 40 years? Do you have something like that for your collection?
John, you go first.
Okay. Well, I will defer to what I'm looking for the Lake Placid Olympic Museum that we don't have, because I think that's more appropriate at this stage. Because for me, I don't really look for anything specifically for myself anymore. What I'm looking for the museum, and it has a wonderful 32 collection. We've assembled quite a lot, even though there wasn't that much back then at the height of the Depression. But one of the badges that they produced, that the organizing committee produced in 32, was for the IOC members, and they only made 20 of them. They every once in a while, and in fact, there was one recently in an auction. One of the badges will pop up, but that's something which we do not have in the museum, and it's quite valuable. But that's one I keep looking for to hopefully get for the museum, because we have the others, we have the original dies for them, but we just don't have that IOC badge, and that would be a plum for us.
Hey, Jonathan, do you have all three winners' medals?
From 80, yes, of course.
No, no,
32,
32.
no, we don't. We have just bronze.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we had a loan of a silver, but the family took it back a few years ago. And but we do not, which is too bad.
That's one of my favorite stories of collecting is a 32 gold came up for auction in Norway. A family was
Mhm.
auctioning their individual collection. So I had somebody at the auction, and
Mm.
at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was in my house in La Cañada in my pajamas on a cell phone with this person, and the price kept going up and up and up, and finally he said, "There's only two bidders, you and the IOC," because they didn't have it in Lausanne, and they had a budget and I didn't, so it's at the museum right now.
Which is wonderful. Yeah, I'm hoping someday, we'll get a gold and a silver. I mean, there are several in town because, well, Jack Shea, who won the both two of the speed skating events, there was a local hometown hero, and his family still has them here in Lake Placid, and they're tucked away safely. But I'm hoping someday we might get a loan of them, or at least one of them to put on exhibit.
I certainly hope that you do. Karen, what about you? Is there anything in particular you're searching for?
Well, sometimes there's the one that got away because with Olympic collecting, sometimes you don't know that something that turns up is never going to show up again, at least maybe not for 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
And so maybe Gordy can help me out with this. I need the 1932 LA gold badge. So any kind of that. And I'm also looking though, so that's something that would be quite expensive. But then I need a bid pin from Bangkok 2008. You just don't know when something will turn up on eBay or in an auction. So that's sort of what I'm looking for now.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, that actually helps pivot to the next set of questions that I wanted to ask you, and that is, how does someone start collecting? If someone in our audience today wanted to start getting involved in this world, how do they do it? What advice do you have? Anybody would like to
Well,
start with that?
I think if you want to collect pins, unfortunately, you have to have pins. So I would say go on eBay and find these things where someone's selling 200 pins for maybe $100. I mean, if you can get a pin for 50 cents, that's a good
That's
deal.
true. Yeah.
Because retail, sadly, it's like $12.99, and that's a lot to invest in one pin that you're then going to trade away. And so if you have these pins, then you can go trading or just look on eBay for things that just attract your attention. You don't have, sometimes you just want a collection that you build yourself, not one that you have to trade and get different things.
Yeah. I think also one of the things is to get in touch or join one of the organizations that clubs or organizations that specialize in Olympic memorabilia and pins, because those organizations are global. That's why there's also now, there has been a World Collectors Fair every year that is under the patronage of the International Olympic Committee. We're going to host the fair next year in the United States. It's going to be in Colorado Springs. And this past spring, it was in Prague, Czech Republic, and it was well attended. I was there, and Karen was there. It was a lot of fun, and you find a lot of this stuff. Admission is always free, and people can find not just the pins. You find the medals, you find badges, you find diplomas, you find virtually everything. And it's another way of getting in touch. I mean, finding these things, getting started, if you will. There's going to be a national collectors show at the end of this month in Orlando, Florida. And it's again free admission, 3 days, the last weekend of the month of this month, and you'll find just about everything you can there. It's going to be a lot of fun and great way for people to get their feet wet.
Or go to an antique fair and just say, do you have anything
Mhm.
Olympic? And
Right.
sometimes somebody will bring something out that no one has ever asked about, and it's something that appeals to you. I was in a jewelry store and I was just talking to somebody. They said, "Oh, I have some Olympic pins." I'm like, "Oh, okay." From 1996. It turns out he had the gold Atlanta bid pin that I'd never seen before. So I was able to get that.
The other thing for a starter would be to join the Olympian um, Collectors Club.
Yes. Yep.
And
And that's the one, that's the club who's hosting the show at the end of this month.
right, and start getting on their newsletter and stuff. If you're interested in spending money and you're interested in the more rare stuff, a lot of my collection came from there's like three big auction houses now for Olympic memorabilia. Ingrid O'Neill, who lives out here in California, does great auctions. Ulf Strom in Sweden, and our auctions in Boston have become very, very active too. So there's auction houses. They do several auctions a year, and boy, they have. Used to be they had limited stuff. Now they have everything. It's pretty remarkable, but
Well,
it's
I
expensive.
am. I'm looking in the chat and I see that Nick Walliver with ISO has put in a link to the show that's coming up in Orlando, and Jim Goddard has put in a link to the Olympian Club. So Nick and Jim, thanks so much for dropping those links in the chat. We appreciate it. Um, so that's how somebody can start their own collection. Why should somebody start a collection? Why should somebody get involved with this?
I can't speak for everybody, but I know for myself personally, when you see something on television, and I was a little kid watching, remembering the Olympics, and the first Olympics that I remember well, reasonably well, was the Mexico City Olympics on TV. And I was just a little kid, but it was just, I wanted to see how involved, what I could get. And I even had a fantasy at the time of maybe making an Olympic team because I ultimately joined, I was on my high school and college track team. And so I always had that fantasy. Now I never was good enough. But aside from that, the connection I had was collecting the memorabilia. And, and then 1984, when it was in LA, really got me going because it was in this country, the Summer Games, and it was just, even though I had been to Lake Placid, it was even, bigger, more fun. It was a totally different thing. Now I didn't go, but I did go to Sarajevo, but I didn't go to LA. And but watching it on TV, it draws you in even more. And I wanted to try and acquire more. So it's just like very exciting, and it just juiced me up.
I think that's a great answer.
And I think that
Karen?
let's say you're a fan of gymnastics and you love Nadia Comaneci. You could get an autograph. I mean, that's something that you'd either find on eBay or in one of these larger auctions. You can find a ticket from when she competed. So maybe you want to get tickets for all of her perfect tens. And then you can get a pin, and maybe it's the Romania pin from 1976. And so I think it's the connections that you make. It's not just the collection, it's the connection. I think one of the problems Olympic collectors have is it's 2 weeks every 2 years. And with baseball, it's 162 games plus the World Series over 7 months. And so that's something that we have to keep going year round with Olympic collecting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, when there are events that cross over, such as Miracle on Ice, such as Muhammad Ali, such as Jesse Owens, when you have those figures or those teams that cross over, you actually get people who do not normally collect Olympic memorabilia that get involved in it. And it's proven, I can use the example because you brought it up, Gordy, RR Auction, for example. They've grown the hobby because a lot of their collecting base were not Olympic collectors. And yet he had such an offering in RR at their twice annual auction that they just draw in sports memorabilia collectors, collectors of high-end items, and then they become Olympic collectors. So it kind of feeds itself.
It's also interesting that with collecting the pins from the National Olympic Committees, you learn the flags, you learn a lot about the geography. And so for kids, it's good to just kind of they go around the world in collecting.
It's true.
Yeah, I think if I went on Jeopardy and they had a flag thing, I'd do pretty well.
Oh, I'm sure you would.
I wouldn't get all 205, but I'd get a lot.
You
It's
recognize those pretty quickly.
My answer to the question is just you know, uh, the reason to get involved in collecting is, first of all, just camaraderie. When you're at the games, trading pins with people from other countries, and you strike up a conversation, and it's just a great way to meet people and have fun. And then there's the nostalgia element. I mean, I think you said that Karen collected coins. I have a coin and stamp collection from when I was a kid. I love collecting, and that nostalgia aspect of it's important. And finally, another thing Karen said is the art. Some of this stuff is beautiful. It's like jewelry. It's you just look at it, wow.
Why, for example, I love the diplomas because I feel that they're art.
Yeah.
But you also have the personal connection, which you mentioned. And actually, I have my one little side story. When I was a kid, growing up in Rye, New York, I took swimming lessons from Buster Crabbe. And he was a Rye resident, and he actually one summer did swim lessons at the local Boy Scout center, and I was one of the kids that were taking lessons from him, and I started learning about the Olympics at that point through him. So there was that personal connection there.
I'm glad it was Buster Crabbe and not Johnny Weissmuller.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I sent in a photo. There's a 1936 South Africa pin that is just gorgeous. And then also the 2024 South Africa pin. It's nice, but it doesn't reach the same level of quality.
Well, the older ones, the older pins and badges are so much nicer. They really are works of art, and they're more difficult to create. You just don't see that today.
Yep, Annie just posted that 1936 South Africa pin in the chat. It is beautiful with the, is that a deer or
The
ibex or?
springbok.
Springbok.
Springbok is the
Yeah.
symbol of South Africa.
Okay, okay. It is beautiful for sure. I would love to hear from the three of you. How do you feel that collectors help preserve and share the history of the movement of the Olympic and Paralympic Games? What role do collectors play in that?
I think they keep it alive. I think if it wasn't for collectors, you would have, as Karen pointed out, it's once every 2 weeks every 2 years, and it really would go away on those weeks in between. Whereas the collecting is 365 days a year, and with clubs like the Olympic Club or some of the other organizations, SPI Sports Philatelists International is another one that in this country, well, global, but they are mostly philatelic, but still sports and Olympics. It keeps it going because there's the trading, there's the sharing of knowledge, and that's 365 days a year. So I think collectors really keep the movement going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as a sports journalist, there weren't that many women when I started in the 80s. And so like I collected something, it's a 1920 press badge from Antwerp. And what really appealed to me about that is it's a woman, which you didn't really see much back then. And so it's also made out of cardboard. That might have been thrown away if not for collectors who value it and who would keep that in their collection and show it off.
Yeah, for me, as I said before, um, I wanted to take my collection out of my um, second floor room in my house and have it somewhere where people could see it. Um, what I love about the Olympics, and it started in Sarajevo in 1984, is like three things. First of all, it's the greatest sporting event on earth. But what distinguishes it from other sporting events is that other element of patriotism. Everybody in America, right, left, in between, are cheering for our great young athletes when they put on the uniform and compete. Um, and the third thing is just Pierre de Coubertin had a dream of bringing the young people of the world together, making the world a smaller, more peaceful place. And the Olympics doesn't always live up to that, but there are times when it lives up to it spectacularly, like um, the whole story, which I won't go into now, of Jesse Owens and Lutz Long, the German long jumper who became tremendous friends under the glare of Adolf Hitler. So all those things make the Olympics special. And so my idea was always to just create something where people could go and just see the whole history of the Olympics, because I wanted to inspire sponsors, donors, fans, aspiring athletes to get involved with the Olympics because it's different, and it's important.
I also think that the Olympic memorabilia is like a snapshot of the culture, of a great
Mm.
sporting achievement, or even of just the time. I mean, just when each country had their own color palette, they have their, just what they call the look of the games. And that sort of brings people back to that certain moment in time.
I was going to ask about
If
that.
if you go to the museum and you're looking at these medals, let's say the winners' medals, there's countless stories behind them. People can look at a gold medal from '84 and think about Mary Lou Retton, hitting on the last two events perfect tens to win the gold medal, and on and on and on. So each one has a story, and that's part of what the Olympic Museum tries to do, is bring those stories to life. And then
Absolutely. We
hopefully
Go ahead.
some little girl watching that who's tumbling around in her living room at age 6 will become the next Mary Lou Retton.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. At our book club event just a few weeks ago, we had Melissa Stockwell, a Paralympian from the United States, talking, and she was sharing that her medal has a ding in it because
Uh-huh.
she won her medal and took it home and put it around her son's neck, and he immediately took it off and threw it, and it hit her prosthetic leg, and now it has a little dent in it. And to her, I'm paraphrasing wildly here, but to her that just makes it better because it adds character, and it shows that it's hers and it's her family and her story. So I think you're right, Gordy. The stories behind all of these wonderful objects that we're able to display here in the museum and in all Olympic and Paralympic museums really make it very special.
And they can inspire. Like, let's take the Paralympics, which I am trying to complete that collection. Um, I remember one day we had a donor event for the foundation up in Silicon Valley, and I came in late. I sit at my table, and I meet this lovely young blonde who's at my table, and I understand she's the representative for she's the representative athlete. And so I introduced myself and I asked her to tell her story. And this was Jessica Long, who's the most decorated para athlete I think we have. Um, and she grew up in Russia. She was born with her brother, 13-year-old parents. She was put in an orphanage. At 18 months, um, they had to take off both of her legs at the knees. Now, what's the chance of a kid with no legs in a Siberian orphanage to have a happy ending to her life? And an American couple that already had, I think, 3 kids, wanted to adopt uh, somebody with a disability. They adopted her, and and now she's got like 25 medals or something. And when Jessica stands up at a donor function and says, you never, no matter what cards you're dealt, you never let life get you down. You always can push on. And so, again, that's the story. If you look at some of her Olympic medals, they're on display somewhere, and people get that story. It can be inspirational to all sorts of facets of people's lives.
Something that comes up sometimes is, why do collectors have these medals and not the athletes? And
Mm.
sometimes it's just because the medal, the people have passed away, and then who gets it in their family among the descendants. So maybe they'll sell it, but then it goes to a collector who will tell the story of the athlete. I have a silver medal from 1932 from a Swedish man named Bertil Sandstrom in team dressage. And he actually won a second silver medal, but he was moved to last place because he was making noises to his horse, and that was not a part of the rules. So the stories behind it are also they're fun to talk about.
Fantastic.
I agree that the stories are fantastic. We have had a lot of questions from our audience today, so I would love to pivot and ask some of those. Our first question is, can you talk about how you care and store and preserve your collections? How do you make sure that you're that it's being preserved for the next generation?
Well, I know for myself, when I deal with a lot of paper, I try to keep it in acid-free folders or acid, if it's, for example, the diplomas in a frame on a wall, acid-free mat, and UV safe glass because you don't want it to fade. I've had that experience. Unfortunately, you leave something out and if the sun hits it enough, it really can wreck the paper item. As for pins, and I'm not the expert on this, but the two of you can probably do better on this in explaining. But with pins, basically you can put them on a board, but you want to be sure that they're temperature-wise, it's not crazy. I mean, they don't have to be in perfect temperature, but I had some that I put in the basement one time, and unfortunately, they started to rust. And that's not a good thing. So you have to be careful about humidity and so forth. But I mean, you don't have to go crazy. And the metals, you want to keep them preserved well in a box with pretty much well, I don't want to say flammable, but non-volatile materials that will rub off on them, chemicals that are in the material, because there's some metals over the years that were presented in boxes that the linings were chemically active, shall we say, and they corrode the metals. So you have to be very careful, but it's not difficult.
Thanks, Jonathan. Any other tips on preserving a collection, Gordy or Karen?
Well, for me, the way to preserve your collection is give it to the U.S. Olympic Archive or the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Museum, and I count on them taking care of it. But when I had the collection upstairs, I'll tell you a funny story. So like Jonathan said, I had everything mounted on felt and drawers and temperature control, et cetera. But after we founded the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Archive, they hired an archivist, and she came out to look at my collection because she always obviously wanted me to give it to the archive, which I did. But she came out and she was horrified. She was horrified that people would come over and I'd say, "Here, put a gold medal around your neck and look at it," and I would touch it with my fingers. So a couple of days later, I get this box in the mail, and it's got all these white gloves, and stuff.
Yeah.
He was trying to bring me up to like, museum grade care for my collection.
Yeah, that's just the thing about being a coin collector. You only hold it on the rim. You
Yep.
don't want people putting a big thumbprint on your medal.
Yep.
And with the pins, you do want to separate them. You don't want them all in a bag so they
Scratch each
clank
other.
around and scratch
Yeah.
each other. And like John said, with tickets and programs, also you want to try to put them in plastic that doesn't react to it, that's acid free.
Yeah. One of the things that's a personal cringe for me is during every Olympics you're watching it on TV or you're there, and when the athletes receive their, especially the gold medals, and they bite on them.
Yeah.
And that to me is it's become widespread now. I mean, I think everyone does it at one point. And I know that, you're exciting, it's an honor, it's wonderful. However, I'm just thinking of that poor medal and then the teeth marks because you do get marks on it. And it's like, oh gosh, no, no. And but they do it. And so that's just one of my little cringe things.
Fair enough. So when we all start our collections, do not bite the things that you
There
are
you go.
collecting.
Now
I'll
you got
make a
it.
note of that
Right.
one. So, uh, all three of you have talked a lot about sort of 3D objects, the pins and badges and things.
Mhm.
But we had a question from Jim asking, is there much interest or value in publications like daily Olympic programs from the games? Do you know anything about that? Is there value in collecting those?
Yeah, actually, they can be very valuable. It runs the gamut. If you have, for example, daily programs from 1896, they potentially can be $1,000, $2,000 in good condition. Whereas the current you don't find typically you don't find daily programs much anymore. But when they did issue daily programs, for example, in the 60s with Tokyo, Mexico City, even into the 70s, Munich. You can buy them today online or through other collectors for $20, $30, or even less. And but again, they can be very valuable too. They are very collectible. And they're also a real window in history. And it's interesting. There are two schools of thought on this. Some people collect them; they want the pristine program, unadulterated, no tears, no thing. But then there are also the ones that have the penciled in marks, the penciled in scores, and the results, which shows that was there. And that person who had that program was watching, for example, Jesse Owens in 1936 win the 100 meters, and it shows his name written in pencil and the time, and that person cared enough to do that. To me, that means something very special, and that's a personal interaction. And a program like that to me is worth more than just a pristine, unused one.
It's the same with the tickets. Some people want
Yeah.
unused tickets that have the stubs. And for me, that's a lost opportunity. Somebody did not get to see the event. Although nowadays they just scan them, so you get to keep your stub. And so it's a perfect
Or
ticket.
you don't even get tickets at all anymore.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Another question that has come in, and I'm excited about this one. If you could sit down with an athlete or a person connected to one of your favorite objects, what would you want to ask that person?
Wow. Wow. That's a tough one, I think. I think for me, I have in my collection it's not a diploma, but it's in 1920 in Antwerp, first place winners in individual events received, aside from the medal and a diploma, they received a statuette. And the statuette is actually, it's a lovely piece, and it's one of my favorites. And I have one, and I have no idea who won it. But I think if I knew that person, I'd say, is this piece as precious to you as, for example, your medal or your diploma, or is it even more special because other Olympics they didn't do this? And I think that would be a question I might ask.
That would be interesting to hear that answer for sure.
Well, who wouldn't want to sit down with Jesse Owens? I do
Yeah.
have the tickets for the 1936 Olympics, and it's interesting too because I know which ones were the Jesse Owens events. So there
Yeah.
were 9 days, but he only competed on like five of them or four of them.
Yeah.
And so he talked a lot about what it was like, but I think it would just be fun to reminisce and know
Mhm.
what he was going through at that time.
Yeah.
100%. I would love to hear from Jesse Owens the story of his relationship with Lutz Long. For those of you
Oh,
that don't know
sure.
it, just really quickly, is Jesse goes over, and of course Hitler was promoting the Master Aryan race, And so here comes Jesse, the son of a Alabama sharecropper. And in the long jump, in the preliminaries, he misses on all of his initial, he faults on all of his initial runs. He's got one jump left. And so Lutz Long, who is this big blue-eyed, Aryan statuesque guy on the German team, comes up to Jesse and he says, Jesse, you're the best long jumper in the world. Just leave a foot before the line and you'll easily qualify. And Jesse did. He qualified. And the next day, Jesse Owens won the gold and Lutz Long won the silver. And they marched around the stadium together under the glare of Hitler. They became friends. Lutz showed Berlin to Jesse. They kept friends. And in 1940, I think it was 43, he gets a letter from Lutz saying, I'm in Sicily. I don't think I'm coming back from the war. I have a child now. Please, after the war, come back and tell my wife and child how it should be between men in this world. And like within a week, Lutz was killed by the Allies. Jesse went back, reconnected to the family, and then I don't know, I think in 1960, he stood up as the best man at Lutz's child's wedding. And that would have made Pierre de Coubertin very happy. But I would love to hear that story because I'm sure I've got parts of it wrong. I'd love to hear that from Jesse. I'd also, Jonathan mentioned Antwerp. I would love to sit down with Bill Garland, who went to the Antwerp Olympics, got interested in the Olympics, relentlessly pitched Pierre de Coubertin bringing the Olympics to LA. He finally was made an IOC member. He brought the Olympics to LA in 1932, despite war and a depression, and everybody thought it was going to be Billy's folly. And of course, it ended up being a resounding effect. And then his son ended up bringing the Squaw Valley Games in 1960.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, there's lots of people in the movement I'd love to talk to.
I once covered an event with a long jump, and the favorite, he fouled 3 times. And I said to the person who won, did you think about being like Jesse Owens and Lutz Long and telling him to move back a foot? He's like, no, I have a family to feed. I needed to win.
I guess one of my favorite memories is in Lake Placid is how the Lake Placid community or the organizing committee in Lake Placid actually got the games in 80. They had bid for many games over the years after 32 and did not get them. And in fact, also tried to get the games in 76 after Denver backed out, which went unsuccessful. Of course, it went to Innsbruck. But for 1980, you're talking about a town with a population of 1,800 people. And even though they had held the games in 32, the town was very small, not a huge population base, as I mentioned. And yet they put together this committee that just had the right connections and the right chutzpah, if you will, to go to the IOC, well, first of all, the USOC at the time, and get that approved, and then go to the IOC and to get the games and get it awarded. And it was a big deal from just this group of local people who sat on this committee. And it actually, the story in that is fascinating on its own right. And I got to know a lot of them while they were still alive. So it's a fascinating tale, if you will.
No shortage of fascinating stories when it comes to Olympic and Paralympic memorabilia, for sure. One question that has come in is, how are objects verified? How do you know that the medal that you're about to purchase is the real thing?
Okay. Karen?
Well, first of all, if it's on eBay and it's $39.99 for a winner's medal, that's probably not the real one. But we do have people like John is someone who's an expert on it. You can tell on some of the medals whether it's by the weight or just the if it looks a little pitted, then maybe it's been cast from a mold, so it's not an original. But you really do have to talk to experts because there are people who are making these medals and they're getting better and better for medals, for autographs. One of the things though with tickets, I don't really like them in the slabs where they get certified. I like being able to hold it, even if I don't want to get anything on it from my fingers. But you do have to talk to experts and find out if it's legitimate.
Yeah, it's you learn these things over time, and we as the serious collectors, and I mean there are a lot of them. It's not just us, of course. There are hundreds of them out there. But is what we do is we record weights, record sizes, things like that. So we're able to verify because like I have a gram scale. I'm able to weigh the metals that I'm looking at, or even just estimating a value for someone or authenticating because I help people out that way. And we have records. We go file those records and look through them, and we're able to determine if they're authentic and not to a large degree that way.
Yeah,
From the 1936 Olympics, there are a lot of things that have been made after the time.
Yeah.
And there are also some badges. And it's like you look at the back and you line up where the words, if the R is above the R, it's legitimate. And if it's somewhere to the side, it was made later by someone who had a mold.
And a lot of the 36 badges, the ones you see that are round ones, that these large round ones that are in a lot of auctions or online, they're not real.
With a swastika.
Those were produced post-war by Germans selling to American occupying troops after the Second World War. And then they've reissued them, and it's kind of gotten muddled, but virtually none of the round ones are real.
On the Olympian Collectors Club website, you can submit a question or a photo to someone who has said that they are an expert in the field, and they can tell you.
Interesting. Gordy, it looks like we were able to get you unmuted. Sorry about that.
I put it on mute, and then when I tried to unmute, it said the host is not letting you unmute. So I sent up that message to try to get back on.
Yep. So, any thoughts on verification, Gordy? Anything you want to add to that part of the discussion?
Just pretty much what they said. I mean, I over time bought some things that turned out being fraudulent. I really counted on the official reports and a bunch of books that have been put out that give you the weight and the centimeters and tells you the edge detail, so you can because a lot of the fakes don't have the edge detail on them, and so you can weed out a lot of them.
Yeah, beware of 1936 torches.
Yeah.
And with that, some of them, the authentic torch, it's engraved, and in the torches that are fraudulent, it's a different kind. You can tell. You might not know unless you have them side by side, or if you've seen a legitimate one.
The text on a lot of them are stamped.
Yeah,
the text
there
is
you go.
stamped in, and the legitimate ones are engraved. They're acid etched, and
Yes.
it's very different looking, actually.
But only if you know, because it looks
Only if you know. I think that's the key. One question that was submitted in advance by James K. is, what effect will new tariff policies have on Olympic and Paralympic collecting?
Well, I can tell you, I just bid in an auction this morning for a medal, which I was the high bidder on, and it's in the UK. The auction's in the UK, and I just calculated in my head as best I can what the additional tariffs are going to add to it. I can't be 100% accurate because I don't know if anybody really knows right now. It's kind of a up and down on this and that. So I'm worried. Let's put it that way. I mean, I got the medal at a reasonably good price. However, it may be double that by the time everything is done. And so right now, I think the jury's out on what it's really going to cost for international auctions and purchasing something on eBay from overseas. It's going to be a problem.
When I was filling up my torch collection, the last item that I did not have was the Helsinki torch, which is extremely rare. I think there's only like 4 or 5 of them in public hands. So one finally came up for auction in France, and I bid on it and won. And so I paid the very high price, and I paid the auction, premium, and then it got shipped over, and then I got a letter from the state of California saying I owed this tariff duty on it. It ended up being like 20% or something at that time for bringing in, art from another country, which was a kind of a shock to me. So I can only imagine now
Mm.
uh, of how that's gonna play out. First of all, it changes every day. And so, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a nightmare, I think, if you buy outside the country.
Yeah, I think like on eBay, it just says there will be an extra duty, and it
Yeah.
doesn't tell you what it will be, and so you don't want to buy a $10 pin. And
I've actually seen a few things on there listed on there now that include the duty, and it has a little text on that that this includes all surcharges, including tariff and duty. But it's only from certain countries
right.
where it's set, where the percentage is known, and so
Yeah.
but then there are other ones you have to calculate. You don't know.
Interesting. Thank you. I think we have time for one more question here. So, looking forward, we have the Miko Games, the Milano Cortina Games coming up in just a few months. So, are there modern items from today's games that you think will be highly collectible in the future, that will be sought after in the future? What are your
Well,
predictions for
one of
collecting?
the uh, interesting things is that they've no longer put out participation medals. And so people who have collected those from every games, the last one was in 2018. And instead, the athlete gets a pin. They always got a pin before as well, but that's taking the place of it. And now with tickets, it's all on your phone or
Yeah.
your device, and you can get a souvenir ticket, but it's not quite the same as having the tickets. Mascots, I think they're hard to find now. You'll have to go and get them there. And so I'm not sure. Sometimes it's like mugs. It all depends on what people want. The poster, the mug, the hat. You don't know what's going to be collectible.
Okay.
And every Olympics has a favorite like pin that comes up. In 1984, it was you know, the lipstick pin or something, or there's always something that captures the imagination, and then every collector, ravenously hunts for it and bids it up. And then, of course, after the Olympics, 2 years later, you can buy it on eBay for a tenth of the price.
Well, except the Atlanta varsity pin, which had the Olympic rings. The varsity is a fast food restaurant. It had the Olympic rings and onion rings, and it was promptly banned. And so that was a highly sought after pin. It still costs maybe $200.
Yeah, that's true.
Onion ring pin. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all so much, all three of you, for being so generous with your time and with your expertise today. It really has been a pleasure to learn so much about the world of Olympic and Paralympic collecting. I want to thank everyone who's in our audience today for joining us. I hope you have been as entertained and inspired as I have been. And to learn more about the International Society of Olympic Historians, please visit isoh.org. That's isoh.org. And I invite all of you to join us for our next virtual program, which will be the museum's virtual book club with Jessica Long. That's coming up in December. And to learn more about all of our programming, to purchase tickets, make a donation, or get involved, please visit USOPM.org. Karen, Jonathan, Gordy, thank you so much for your time today. I've really enjoyed
Anytime.
speaking with all of you, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.